Hi there, and welcome to this week's 9/11 Chronicles. So, this week I thought I would talk about what I called zooming, which was sort of a phenomenon that I realized was happening. Well, it took me, probably a year and a half after Aaron's death to realize what was happening exactly. But what I began to realize is that I was kind of accepting every invitation, everything. I got invited out for dinner. Yes, we would totally go, or to a barbecue, or for a weekend away, or whatever it was. And then that first summer, we began having, it was like the kids' birthdays that summer as well. If you have been following my Chateau Chronicles, you will know all about Bruce. But Bruce was a good friend of my husband. And in exchange, I gave Bruce my husband's truck, which was a big bright red Ford F-150, which Aaron had bought just before he died. Maybe about 6 months before he died. He's super proud of it. He really loved that truck. And when he died, I thought, what am I going to do with it? And so we kind of did an exchange, Bruce and I. So I gave him the truck, and in exchange, he came and re-roofed my house. And so he arrived that July, I guess it was the July after, June, July, in there somewhere. It was really, really hot. And if you know Bruce, he's really, really fair. And there he was in 103 degrees, having to wear flannel and jeans. And he's up on a big hot roof, 40 feet in the air. It was a little crazy. And one time he came down, actually, one night we were eating dinner, and he told me he saw Aaron, and I joked that he was checking up on him. So just so many things were happening. Like, it was just kind of go, 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 go. And then after a while, I realized that what was happening was that I was finding things to either keep me away from the house, which reminded me of Aaron, or to just keep me busy enough that I didn't have to think about what was going on. And at the time, it felt really like positive. I was living my life, and like we were going, we were doing stuff, and it kind of felt like I was jumping back into the world. And this particularly after this moment I'd had where I felt like I woke up from the numbness and sort of could see colors again. And so now it felt really important. Summer was here, like we had to take advantage, and we had to live life, and we had to do it all. And what I began to realize is that I was just exhausting us all. So I put my daughter in day camp, and she was just completely exhausted, pale, and just, didn't want to go half the time. My son was extra clingy. The kids were fighting all the time. I was yelling at the kids all the time. I just couldn't figure out what was going on until I realized we were all just super exhausted. And that, maybe in the end, I was trying to do too much. And combined with that was this other weird phenomenon that was happening where we would have a big event, and a birthday or something like that, and either kind of leading up to the event or after the event, we would all just be really angry at each other, and there was a lot of yelling, and the kids weren't behaving. They were fighting all the time. Like, it just felt like all this strife. And I would go afterwards to my therapist and just going like, I don't get it. I don't understand what's going on. She'd look at me going, yeah, so didn't somebody just celebrate a birthday, or wasn't there just an anniversary, or whatever it was? And this happened even years later, where I was just sort of like, couldn't figure out why things weren't going smoothly. And I would just forget that there was this phenomenon of, sort of this like period of crazy before an event and a period after the event where it wasn't really clear that it was connected to the event sometimes, and that and that's what I would forget, and then sort of going, oh, okay, like that makes sense now. And after a while, I began to sort of brace myself. So if there was an event coming up, a birthday, an anniversary, whatever it was, I would brace myself, going, all right, this is just going to be a known entity. Like we're going to be thrown off by this. And that first summer was particular to that, because when you're having to deal with the first time of something, it was like the first birthday after my husband died, like my daughter's first birthday, and then my son's first birthday, and then our anniversary, and like just all of the stuff. And it all just took such an enormous emotional toll that you think like, oh yeah, yeah, of course you would get through it. Like, of course, like that would be normal. But when you're in it, you don't see it as normal. Like, it feels really abnormal. It feels really like your world is falling apart and you can't figure out why. So anyway, I just sort of thought I would impart that just for people who are going through it, to remind yourself when you're accepting all the invitations, you're trying to do all the stuff, that probably often the reason you're doing that is to avoid going home or to avoid thinking about the loss. And then to realize as well that there is an emotional toll just before and after events, whatever they may be. And just, it helped when I could expect it, when I could anticipate that hard, that hard emotional toll it would take. And I would just sort of learn to take extra good care of myself, and maybe book an extra massage, or get a pedicure, whatever it was, just to sort of like acknowledge that this was happening and that this was real, because you kind of think you're going crazy. A lot of grieving is convincing yourself that this is normal behavior, and that grieving is crazy making. It really is. And you really do feel like you're crazy sometimes. So I'm just here to tell you, you're not.